Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Facebook Live that I run every week on my Facebook page at 1 o'clock. I am absolutely delighted to be here today with one of the most exciting authors I've read in the last few years. I'm a huge fan, Clare Mackintosh. How are you, Clare?
I'm really well. Thank you so much for having me on this. It's really nice to be able to chat, cup of tea, put the world to rights.
I know it is, and actually see the face of another human being who isn't just the members of your family that we've all been cooped up with for the last however many weeks. Before we start, everybody, hello. I can see a few names already popping up, so it's lovely to see you here as ever. Please do ask questions and say hello. The more questions you ask, the more you will be in with a chance of winning some signed books. As ever, I always give one away, so you can either pick from You, Me, Everything, which is my first novel that I wrote as Catherine Isaac, or my new one, which is Messy Wonderful Us, which is all set in Italy, which, oh gosh, what I'd do to be back in Italy at the moment, doing my research for that. And Claire, I think you have been kind enough to say you'd be able to give away a book as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a signed copy of After the End to give away. And I've also got some quick reads that I had signed. So I think I've got one by the short stories with Jojo Moyes signature and all sorts
Oh, brilliant.
of others. So yeah, I've got a few giveaways.
Excellent. Right. Well, get the questions coming then, and because that would be a fantastic prize. So, Claire, I usually start by reading out a little bit of a biography, which I'm about to do now. Here we go. Hopefully, this is right. So, with more than 2 million copies of her books sold worldwide, #1 bestseller Clare Mackintosh is the multi-award-winning author of I Let You Go, which won the Theakston Old Peculier Crime Novel of the Year in 2016. Both Clare's second and third novels, I See You and Let Me Lie, were #1 Sunday Times bestsellers, and all three of her books were selected for the Richard and Judy Book Club. Clare's latest novel, After the End, spent 7 weeks in the Sunday Times hardback bestseller chart and was published in paperback last week, going straight in at #8. Congratulations, by the way. That's after only less than half a week's sale. So fantastic. Clare's books have been published in more than 40 countries. She's a patron of the Silver Star Society, a charity based at the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, which supports parents experiencing high risk or difficult pregnancies. She lives in North Wales with her husband and their 3 children. Clare, you've got such an interesting background, and what it didn't mention is that you're an ex-police officer as well, which I'm fascinated in, and how you moved from that to going into writing. And I should say, I Let You Go. I think once a year I will find a book that I love so much, I just press it into everybody's hands that I meet and bore on about it the whole time. And I Let You Go was that book when it first came out, and I remember looking in it and thinking, when I was looking for an agent a different agent at the time, and I remember reading that book and thinking I just was so blown away by the twist in particular, and I just loved it so much, pressed it on everybody, and I ended up getting in touch with Sheila, our lovely agent, and we're now agented by the same person. But it was just the most fantastic book. But After the End is very different. It's a real departure, isn't it, from the first couple of books that you'd written?
It is. I sort of resist the idea that it's a huge departure, because my books are all about ordinary people in extraordinary situations.
Yeah.
It just happens to be that the first 3 books, that extraordinary situation was sort of in a crime world.
Yeah.
Where the extraordinary situation in After the End is a medical dilemma. But I think there are still lots of similarities in terms of the structure and the way I write, and and the voice. I have one voice really in my novels, and that's very consistent. But it is a little bit different. It's certainly not a crime novel. It's about a couple who disagree on the medical care that their critically ill son should have. Should they fight to keep him alive and accept the limitations that that he'll be left with, or should they remove him from intensive care and let him pass away? And the couple don't agree. So it's a book about what happens when you have to make a very difficult decision, and it tears you apart as a couple. And more importantly, how do you come to terms with that, and how do you move forwards towards a new normal?
I actually think even though the books that your what you might describe as your crime books, there was still very much a kind of emotional thread to all of them, wasn't there?
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't write. I've never written police procedurals.
Yeah,
there is a procedural and investigation element in all my novels, but I've always focused on the story behind the crime, behind the dilemmas, and it's what fascinated me the most when I was in the police. I liked establishing the stories, finding out why people had come to commit the crimes that they did, and exploring that very, very thin line between a good life and a bad one, and the different ways that we might be tempted to cross it.
Yeah, brilliant. So there's lots of questions coming in here, Claire. So one of them, here's one. Do you both have a favourite book or character you've written?
Ooh, for me, it changes all the time.
Yeah.
I Let You Go will always be a very special book because it's the book that changed my life, and made me a full-time author. Technically, I think Let Me Lie is a better constructed novel. I'm sort of very proud of the way it's written. After the End is special because it's inspired by real life events, and it's a book that I've wanted to write for, gosh, more than 10 years. So I think right now it's probably my favorite book.
Yeah.
As for characters, yeah, I do have a favorite character, and it's actually a retired detective in Let Me Lie called Murray, and he's my just my favorite character. How about you?
Gosh, it's really hard, isn't it? Because I really think that you are, personally, I feel completely immersed in the book that I am either currently writing or the one that I've just, or, the one that I've just written. So I actually find it really hard to kind of step out of that and think back to the ones that I've previously written. So I am at the moment, my favorite character, and this may, as you say, it changes all the time. I'm in the process of putting the finishing touches on my next novel that will be out in hardback in November, called The World at My Feet. And that is about, it's about, the main character is basically, she's an Instagram gardener who looks like she's got everything, but she is absolutely not what she seems, and kind of unfolding and creating the layers of that character and then living with her, for the whole duration of writing the book. I absolutely loved. So yeah, my head is still there really at the moment.
It's a little bit like being in a relationship, isn't it? And when you're in it, all your ex-partners they fall short of the mark, really.
That's such a good analogy. It really is. Their history, really. I mean, even though I think far more fondly about my previous characters than some of my ex-boyfriends, I have to say. Anyway. Okay, Emily Williams is saying, if any of your book, actually I think about this because you're I think all of your novels would be absolutely brilliant as probably TV, but Emily is saying, if you could pick a book that could be a movie, which one would you pick and why?
After the End.
Okay.
Particularly a movie, and that distinction, I think, that you've just mentioned, TV, is really important because not everything works as a movie.
Yeah.
And I've never, for example, seen I Let You Go as a movie, or
Yeah.
I See You in particular. I think I See You would make a really good TV drama, but After the End, I think, would make a brilliant movie, sweeping Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
and I'm still holding out hope that that might happen.
Yeah.
We've not yet sold the rights to it, but who knows? I've been working on developing I Let You Go over the last few years. So it's a really long project, but I've been the screenwriter for that. And I love the process of writing the same story for a different medium. It's been such a learning
Oh,
curve.
wow. Okay. So that's an ongoing project, is it?
It is, yeah, yeah. I mean, these things move very slowly, as you
Oh,
know,
yes.
but we're yeah, we're moving forward. We've got a great director that I really love. We're talking to cast. We're getting there slowly.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I mean, in terms of mine, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Not all of them would work as movies. I think Messy Wonderful Us, which is my latest one. I could see that because there's a mystery at the heart of it. It's about two friends who travel to Italy to try and unravel the secrets of the main character Ali's, her mother's past. And so they travel to Italy, and there is this mystery that unfolds throughout the course of the story. So I kind of see that as a TV thing rather than, if Netflix wants to call, that's great. But yeah, in terms of movies, You, Me, Everything, the movie is still ongoing, and hopefully we'll be seeing that on our screens. But obviously, lockdown is.
Have you had much involvement with that?
Well, I basically handed everything to. I mean, the team are fantastic. It's Lionsgate and Temple Hill who are the people who are making it. So they made The Fault in Our Stars and Twilight. So the screenwriter is the guy who wrote Chocolat. So this is this amazing team, and I wouldn't even begin to dream of thinking I could tell them anything about how to do it. But they have shared the script, and they're keeping me involved in that sense. So it's just I mean, if it happens, it'd be the most exciting thing ever, but we'll see. Right, there's somebody saying she's just read The Donor, and that's persuaded her to go and look out for your books, Claire. So it just shows you that the quick reads,
I'm
fantastic.
Absolutely passionate about the quick reads.
Yeah,
I think they're such an amazing scheme, and if you've not come across them before, they're produced by publishers in conjunction with the reading agency, and they're predominantly aimed at emerging readers, so perhaps people who are learning English as a foreign language, or they've never read a book before, or they haven't read a book for ages, or they have dyslexia, myriad of reasons. But they're also just brilliant books in their own right, and they're quite short and accessible. And I first read quick reads when I just had a baby and couldn't really focus on anything. So I really advise you to seek them out, because they're a really good way of discovering new authors.
Brilliant. There's a great question, actually, that would be particularly interesting, I think, for when applied to you, actually, Claire, which is from Nicole. And perhaps you could talk a little bit about your job previously. So she said, if you weren't an author, what career path would you take? Would you still be a police officer?
Yeah, I think so. It's really hard to tell, because I didn't leave the police to become a writer. I left the police because I could no longer juggle the career that I had with the kind of parent I wanted to be.
Okay.
And it's a very personal choice, and I'm a big believer in women in particular being able to follow their career dreams, but it wasn't working for me. And I suspect I would have done any job to have made it possible to be home with the kids. But yes, I think I probably would have gone back to the police eventually. I was at the time an inspector, preparing for my chief inspector. And so now, gosh, that was 2011 I left. So in the last 10 years, I would imagine if I'd stayed in the police, all being well, I would now be perhaps a chief superintendent, working very long hours, especially at the moment with everything going on.
Yeah.
I was specialising in public disorders, so I was a riot commander and public order commander. And that was the area that I wanted to carry on working in. So I think life would have been very different instead. But I stopped being mom and became just mum.
Great. I'd still be a journalist, I think. I was a journalist for many years before I became an author. And mind you, if I was, I was a newspaper journalist, which they are a dwindling breed at these days. Oh. But I loved being a journalist. I really did. But I also feel very, very lucky to have had this second career, which is, I feel so privileged to be doing something that I absolutely love. I do miss a newsroom though.
Did you cross over with your careers, or did you stop being a journalist?
No, I crossed over. So my first book I wrote when I was on maternity leave. I was the editor of one of the local newspapers, the Liverpool Daily Post. And of course, there were quite long hours. It was quite a full-on job, and it was with my first child when I was on maternity leave. And I just, well, like you're trying to. It's the children thing, isn't it? I just thought, how am I ever going to be able to do this job, well, and and be, a good mum at the same time. And people can juggle all these things, but it was just. So it was partly that, and partly this kind of ambition that I'd harbored for years and years to be an author, but I'd never quite managed to, find the time or, motivation to do something about. So, right, there's lots of great questions coming here. Let me see. So Joanne has asked a good question for you, Claire. She says, Claire, you're one of my favourite authors and your books stay with me long after I've read them. Is there a book you've read and felt the same?
What a great question. And that's lovely to hear. Life After Life for me by Kate Atkinson, which is a book that I can read again and again. It's a book I dip into sometimes because, there are some books you can do that with. I read it in about 2010. And I read it when my husband and I were on our very first holiday without the children. We'd gone to Madeira for 5 days and the children were all at home with grandparents. They were very tiny. And the grandparents had one each. They were sort of hived off. And I was reading it in the pool, and I dropped the book in the pool and destroyed it.
Oh, no.
Finishing it, I went to my hotel room and bought it on Kindle so I could read it on the app in my phone, and so I carried on. And I just think it's brilliant. I love the fact that it deals with all these sliding door moments that life could go off in so many different directions. So I'm a huge fan.
That is fascinating, because this is a real writer question here. But one of the things that obviously is, we're delving into your, after the end, it is written in a very particular way, isn't it? The structure. Was that inspired partly by Kate Atkinson's technique, or did that give you?
No, it wasn't at all. So I've had the idea for After the End for since 2006, which is when I was in hospital with my son who was very ill, and we had been given this horrific decision to make. And I've always been a really big fan of the poet Robert Frost, and he one of his poems, so I've marked the page because I always end up wanting to read it and I always get it wrong. So one of his poems is The Road Not Taken, which lots of people know. It's very famous. And he says, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveller. And I think it's, I really love that, because I think we do this all the time. We stand at a fork in the road in our lives, and we want to know what's at the end of that road so that we can decide which one to take. When we had to make this terrible decision, I walked around the hospital grounds, and I thought about this poem, and I thought about these 2 roads, these 2 very clear options that we had, that actually we didn't know what either of them really had in store. And so what I wanted to do with After the End was to write both of them.
Yeah.
I wanted to be one traveller and travel both roads. And so that as a structure was something that I had in my head for a very long time.
Okay.
And when I read when I read Life After Life in 2010, I got really excited by the fact that here was a book that obviously was written, expertly at the hands of an author who really knew what she was doing. It was resonating with readers. It was certainly resonating with me. And it gave me huge confidence that it was a structure that I could use, because
could be done.
Often need examples, I think, or just that confidence that it's something that you might be able to pull off.
Yeah, well, you definitely pulled it off. It is the most beautiful, and for anyone who hasn't read it, it's an incredibly hopeful book. I think, Claire, you've just done a fabulous. It is a fabulous piece of writing. Someone's saying they love your book club, Claire. So, I mean, for anybody, I mean, obviously we've got lots of readers, so do sign up to Claire's book club. It's well worth doing.
My book club, just while I see a comment, Sarah Parker, and thank you for that suggestion of a song. I'm going to go and look at that afterwards. My book club is just the best thing for me that I've done in years, I think. Yeah. Last summer, I hit a bit of a wall in terms of my reading. I was reading the same stuff. I wanted to break out a little bit, and simultaneously I also hit a bit of a wall in terms of sending out author newsletters, which is something that we're encouraged to do, to be in touch with readers, and I just was uncomfortable with the idea of me dropping into people's inboxes all the time with me. So I flipped everything round and set up a book club instead. And so we read a different book each month, and we talk about it on Facebook, and it's really, really fun. And I've met some great people in it.
Yeah, it's well worth signing up. While while we're talking about newsletters and that kind of thing, I must make a plea to people. Please do. I do a newsletter once a month, and every single week when I do this, I've got written in big letters newsletter, and I totally fail to tell people I have a newsletter. Please do sign up. It's on my website.
Brilliant. Yours is great, because it's always full of beautiful pictures, like pictures of your lovely house.
Well, I feel
Italy or lovely sunshine. It's a real joy.
I feel like I'm being slightly disingenuous, because obviously we've moved into anyone who signs up to the newsletter or seen me on Instagram or whatever will know that we've moved into this old house that we're doing up. And obviously once you've done a room, I'm really excited about it, and I'll post it on there, and it looks all lovely. But I think I should start posting some before pictures as well, in the interests of honesty, because it's been quite the challenge. Right, let me see. Gosh, there's lots coming. I can barely choose. Right, there's one here. Somebody's asking about how much we get to choose book covers, and how much say we get on the choosing of book covers. Do you want to address that on after? It's a very striking cover after the end, isn't it, with the orange and the.
It is. Well, yeah, it is a striking colour. I've just realised I've got the hardback here actually, and they're quite, they're the same but different.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this on my Facebook page today about, why covers are different, and why we ring the changes. And in fact, my very first book had a completely different cover for the trade paperback, which was like the kind of the larger ones that you see in airports, to the paperback. I'm fairly involved once the concept has been decided. So I don't get involved at the early stages when my editor and the design team are throwing around ideas. I don't want to see those early concepts. It's not my place. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I trust them. I get involved when they show me what they think is a finished concept to be built on. And so far, they've never shown me a concept that I hate. So I always love it. I always think they're in the right direction. And then I get to have an input on the colors or, you know, the smaller bits.
Yeah.
But I've never had to say, you know, I hate it, go back to the drawing board. And I don't think I would, because my job is to write the books and their job is to sell the books. And, you know, they're very good at what they do. What about you? Have you always loved your covers?
No. No, I've had the odd one. No, I think, to be honest, I've written, so this will be my 12th book. And I mean, sometimes you get covers and they land and you instantly love them. And sometimes you get them and they aren't what you imagined, or what this is my experience in that time anyway. And I've had the odd one when I really haven't liked them, but my publishers are brilliant. I'm with Simon & Schuster, and they've always taken on board ideas and or even not ideas, but, you know, you just have a gut instinct. And I think they know that it's important that an author loves their cover, or, you know, and so, yeah, so I've always, everything that's, by the time it's ended up on the shelves, I think they've always done a fantastic one. Messy Wonderful Us. Do you know, my memory served that this was the first cover for this, because I absolutely loved it. But I happened to be looking through my emails the other day and saw the first draft of a cover, and it was completely different, totally different. No lemons, it was all yellow, and there were two people sitting, because it's about a couple, basically. It was completely different. And I actually liked the original one as well, but it just kind of, so I think these things can be a bit of an evolution sometimes, and it's kind of a meeting of, you know, it takes a few heads being put together before you land on the perfect one, I think. But yeah, I am really lucky in the sense that if I haven't instantly liked it, they're really, really good, and they've always gone back and absolutely hit the nail on the head, I think, in the end. So Jade Beer is asking, at this very established point in your career, it's disappeared and becoming so quickly. At this very established point in your careers, how much editing do you need?
More than ever before.
I'm always fascinated by this question.
I love the kind of the implication in there that perhaps now that, you know, we're a few books in, or many books in your case, that maybe we don't need any editing anymore. I think I need more editing the more I go. I need slightly less structural editing now, because I'm able to solve more problems myself and to see them a bit earlier. But I so I think about this. I remember sort of moaning a little bit to my editor on the third book, and saying, you know, this isn't getting any easier. Why isn't it getting any easier? Why am I not getting any better at this? Because the process was just as painful. And she said, no, you are, but the goalposts are moving. She said, this is like when you're a runner and you do your couch to 5K, and then once you can do your 5K, you don't just do 5K better and better and better and better. You sign up for a 7.5K or a 10K or a half marathon, or you start doing some sprints. You push yourself, and so you're going to find it harder each time. And that's kind of what it's like now. So I have mostly two rounds of structural edits. The first one being really quite painful with big changes, and the story might change a lot. The second one that I've just finished being small strands changing, still quite structural, but more like, you know, I've built the house and now I'm perhaps putting an extension on and doing an internal refurb. And now from here on in, it'll just be decorating, and it's easy.
Fantastic. Do you know, every author answers that question completely differently. Adele Parks last week says she is not edited. She does not need editing now. She's onto her 20th book. I don't think that day will ever come. I know. She said she'll sometimes change a paragraph or two. And I thought, God, I think that would literally save me about 2 months a year if I...
She just turns in a perfect...
apparently so. Apparently, I know. But with me, I said, I mean, I always feel personally that my books are, and this will always be the case, even if I'm on my 40th, my books will be better for a second pair of eyes looking at it. I feel, honestly, I don't, I just know they're always better, and especially if you have a good editor as well. But no, some authors, I think Paige Toon is the same as well. She has very, very little editing, but
well,
I love it. I love putting it through the ringer, to be honest. And
I like it. I like the editing process.
I do.
In the same way that I would quite like to have a personal trainer and be pushed to the absolute limits of what I can achieve. So yeah, I'm quite happy to be editing.
I agree. So now this is an interesting one, actually. So Barbara, this is going to be our last question. Barbara is saying, if your books were audiobooks, who would you like to, or would you, sorry, I thought it said, would you like to be the voice to read them, or who would you like to be the voice to read them? Did you consider, have you ever considered, because some authors do, don't they?
Yeah, they do. So I think all our books are audiobooks.
Yeah.
Certainly all of mine are.
Yeah.
And I'm quite involved in the casting of those. So the audio team will send through normally 3 or 4, a short list of 3 or 4 characters, voices for each character. And I'll decide which one. I'll listen to samples. And with After the End, I wasn't sure about the male voice because all the samples I was listening to were quite confident and hard. And Max in After the End has some really complex emotions to work through. And so actually we sent through a page of the book and actually got that the range of actors to read that page so that we could hear, basically we wanted to hear them cry. That was what, it was all about making a male actor cry. Right. So I'm quite involved in that, but I did read the audiobook so I wrote a sort of memoir that came out about 18 months ago called A Cotswold Family Life, which is really a collection of columns that I wrote for a magazine over 10 years. And I had to audition for the audiobook.
Oh, brilliant.
Obviously, they had to make sure that I could do it.
Okay.
But it was I felt under quite a lot of pressure because if I didn't get the gig, to read my own memoir, that would have been really quite bizarre. Anyway, fortunately, I did get the job, and I read
well
it.
Done.
It's not as long as my novels, but it was still 3 days, full days in a studio.
Yeah.
It is absolutely exhausting.
I bet it is. I've only done. I once read out a kind of essay type thing that I did, and it only took about an hour. And honestly, it is exhausting because you have to cut out every pause, don't you? They make you go back and kind of take all the kind of bits of the sentences out that you haven't quite read as smoothly as they might like.
Your mouth makes a kind of a noise, clicking noise or something.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, listen, Claire, this has been absolutely brilliant, and I'm really, really grateful that you've been able to come on and talk about your incredible book, which you're already getting rave reviews about it. People are going to absolutely love. So thank you very much. But before we go, I'm going to pick my winner from list of names.
You're just picking randomly?
I'm just scrolling through. I'm just going to pick a name out if you want to do the same for yours. I'll go for Nicole Roslin, is it? Yeah, I'll go for Nicole. So Nicole, if you want to send me a direct message with your address, and I'll pop and tell me which book you want, and I'll pop a copy in the post early next week. Claire, is there a name that's was left out?
Yes. So Ellie Thomas. What's easier? Can you DM me on Facebook with your address? Is that the easiest?
That should work. And if you have any trouble, come through to me and I'll pass it on. But Claire, this has been absolutely lovely. Really good to catch up with you, and best of luck in the rest of the lockdown, this strange world we're living in at the moment.
Thank you so much for having me on.
No, and hopefully the book will be even higher in the charts next week in the full after you've got a full week's sales. But thanks ever so much, Claire. It's been lovely, and thanks everyone else.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.